1-minute survey at the end, so please fill that in to help us improve the Tech Talks in the future. Okay, now everyone has joined the event. We're ready to get started. Thanks again for joining us. Today's Tech Talk is presented by Microsoft Solutions Architect Matt Smith, talking about Microsoft Secure Score. Here's a quick introduction to Softworks' popular Microsoft Security Tech Talks, if this is the first one you have joined of them. The Microsoft Security Tech Talks are designed to keep your organization on top of the latest Microsoft security stack. These webinars are free technical workshops, semi-structured, and include some slides. The Microsoft Security Tech Talks happen on the third Tuesday of every month, which we call Tech Talk Tuesday. They cover many hot security topics so far, including Defender for Microsoft 365, Microsoft Sentinel, Cloud App Security, Zero Trust, and privileged access management. You can catch up on all our previous Tech Talks on our website. Here's a brief intro to Softworks. Softworks has been a Microsoft Gold partner for over 20 years and is a leading Microsoft cloud security provider, specializing in providing 24/7 managed security support to mid-market organizations with our Security Shield 365 solution built on Microsoft's technology stack and our dedicated SecOps team based at our HQ here in Cambridge. Now I'm excited to introduce the presenter, Matt Smith, who is Microsoft Solutions Architect at Softworks. Matt is Microsoft Solutions Architect at Softworks and joined in 2010 when he's not designing the next level of advanced Microsoft security infrastructure. Matt loves to go touring in classic BMWs across Europe. The trips have taken him across the Alps many times, the Lake District, Peak District, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, Greece, as well as Scotland's North Coast 500. And now at this point, I'll now hand over to Matt to take you through today's main presentation.
Thanks, Phoebe, and welcome everyone. So it's been a while since I've hosted one of these presentations, so let's hope all the technical gremlins are going to play nicely today. I'll dive straight in. There's going to be a little bit of slides, but as always, I'll try and do most of these as kind of live demo in the environment. So as Phoebe said, we're going to look at Secure Score today. I know from the feedback that I get from our pre-sales team that most Office 365 customers know that this exists, and they've got an idea that they should be kind of improving their Secure Score. But we also know that our management teams, they kind of have a general awareness that this good security posture is something that we should have. But we often find, and we're often told, that IT teams struggle to get buy-in when it comes to obtaining budget, to implement the things that you need in order to improve that score that, could make the business as secure as possible. So Secure Score can help us with all this, and hopefully today I'll kind of show you how. As I said, this is going to be kind of mostly a sort of live demonstration, so you should be able to get some kind of tips and kind of quick wins out of it as well. So let's get the basics out of the way first. Secure Score is a tool to measure your organization's security posture. For those of you that have not seen it or never been anywhere near it, the basic premise is that the higher your score, the better your security posture is. The measurement that it works against is a baseline that Microsoft have created for you, and it covers a multitude of products that kind of depend on what you've subscribed to. So if it's not in your subscription, Secure Score is not going to give you that suggestions around it, although in typical Microsoft way, it will highlight the things you could buy. So to talk about the products a little bit, it includes everything from Teams to Exchange, SharePoint, Azure Active Directory, because it's kind of our central identity provider, the whole suite of the Defender 4 products covering Office 365, Endpoint or your devices, your cloud app security, and down to on-premise server systems as well, with things like the identity service that toenails into Active Directory. So It's taking an assessment of what you've got configured across all of those services and giving you a score. So you've then got goals and things that you can adjust and change to improve the security posture of all of those services. Any of you are familiar with things like the Windows baselines or the Exchange Server baselines from on-premise systems? You'll find a lot of similarities in how this tool works. Also with things like the group policy templates that we get, you'll be able to draw a lot of parallels between what this is assessing and what it's recommending to you to what those tools used to do. So all of this starts in the Microsoft 365 Defender portal. People get a bit confused with Defender for Office 365 and all the various other Defender names. The key thing to remember is security.microsoft.com as the URL to access. That will take you into the Defender 365 portal, and regardless of whatever your subscription level is, from there you can access the Secure Score page, and it will show you an assessment based on what the products are that you've subscribed to. So let's tempt fate a little bit here and try and jump straight into a live demo, and I'll start taking you through some of the features and kind of how this works. So this is the Defender 365 portal. I'm going to jump straight into Secure Score because we're going to get a focus on that for this morning. So this is the Secure Score dashboard. The point of this dashboard is to give you a quick view of where your organization stands and what needs to be done to improve your score and the ability to analyze the history of what's been happening in your environment. So what we're looking at here is the current score and then a trend over the last 90 days of how that score has adjusted. What we're getting here is a headline of what needs to be done through these kind of actions, and we'll dig a bit deeper into that as we go, and also a comparison of how your score fares against companies of a similar size or type. Now, we've got in here as well the metrics and trends. These give you a quick way to set your score targets, so what you define to be kind of good, okay, bad, and then it will show you against that quickly a kind of just little chart of where you stand against those. And you can also see how your score has adjusted over a kind of short, medium and longer term range. And we do that very quickly here through this kind of date selection bit. So I'm currently looking at what's happened with our score over the last 90 days in total, but I can bring that down and see what's happened over 30 days and in the last week as well. What these are doing is kind of helping us understand where we're going, what the trajectory is, what the direction is. We can drill down from there into the detail of what the history is, and we can see which of these baseline tests that the service is applying have actually caused that effect on our score, and we can kind of see sort of why or what they're about. So if I pick up just kind of a couple of examples from in here, if we're looking through things like these block Win32 API calls, we can see in there by clicking on it that we gained some extra points in there. So we completed some extra changes in order to do that. The history of it here shows us where points and scores went up and down, and we can see which objects in our environment are currently exposed to this particular problem. We would use that to decide kind of what actions that we want to take, and we can then build from that a case for to take to the business, so we can explain why we need budget, what the changes are that we need to implement. So if I came into here and I saw that in the exposed entities, there were, every device was shown, or, a large proportion of the devices, I could quite safely assume that there's no central control in place that's placing that block on the Office software installs on the PCs. Although if I come in here like this and I see just one, then that suggests more of a support function action that needs to be taken, so they can go and investigate what is it about that particular device. Is it out of scope of a policy, or has it just not been on since the policy was created? So looking at these kind of secure score items, what drives the particular score, they're not all about devices. You can see a lot of them on here have come from a device recommendation, but because we're assessing across all those different products, we've also got recommendations related to things around Azure AD or Teams or all those other services. So you use it to build one big picture overall that you can then take to your management teams in order to secure budget or time or kind of cost or expense, or maybe even tools that you need in order to go and implement the controls. Maybe you don't have tools in place that would allow you to centrally issue to all those people working at home those Office 365 controls, or the controls over the Windows PCs. In that case, you may need to go and secure funding for a tool in order to do that. In each one of these items where it's highlighting what has changed in your environment, so either a new baseline entry was created, so it might affect everything, and it will highlight, a kind of fairly drastic drop in points for that, or devices have come online that you weren't using before that are now vulnerable to it, or more likely a piece of software or a vulnerability was discovered out in the wild. Microsoft have added that to the baseline, so there's now a new check that you then need to address. That will then give you an implementation example that you can use with your technical teams for what it is that you need to put in place. Again, you should use that to build your case with the business, to take to the management teams, to be able to cost and show them the amount of effort that's going to be needed in order to actually make the change across the business. Okay, so this is probably a good point then, because we're talking about devices and the assessment piece, to dive a bit further into that device assessment area. Feedback that I get from our sales team tells me that a great number of people have only ever seen Secure Score in the context of recommendations that it makes against the Office 365 product set. So things you should change, like MFA, or to enable restrictions around access to Teams, people joining services, sharing of content out of Office 365. What we're going to look at here is how you can get a much broader view of your IT estate through the Defender for Endpoint assessment capability. So it's a different tool outside of Secure Score, but they feed directly into each other, which is why I want to highlight it here. So in order to get a true picture of what's going on across your environment and where your vulnerabilities lie, we need to think about what's happening on our endpoint devices. So this part of the Secure Score environment focuses specifically on user devices, whether they're Windows or Mac or even mobile, iOS and Android. They can all be included in here. They all have a method of connecting them. So, and the reason I want to highlight this now is our user devices are typically the most vulnerable point in our infrastructure. They're usually the point of entry, the thing that gets compromised, or more likely the user clicks something, opens something, unintentionally, the machine or the device becomes compromised. So the more we can understand what the risks are and what can be mitigated on those devices, the better for our overall security posture. So in here, we see our device exposure score. This is a useful one, again, to be able to use with your management teams to demonstrate easily kind of where we stand. It's kind of the opposite of the secure score piece. In secure score, you want to get the number as high as possible. In the exposure score, it's the reverse. We want the overall score to be as low as possible across all the devices. So being able to access that sort of level of information this quickly, I think is invaluable to being able to put those business cases together to the management team when you're trying to secure funding. And to just kind of stick with that for a moment, using things like the device scores by the kind of categories that we put them in, they're sort of simple charts that help us get the message across without overwhelming decision makers with a whole load of technical detail. That's often where we find that being able to secure funding to be able to implement these changes kind of falls down, because you're trying to communicate too much information at too senior a level, and then everything becomes kind of overwhelming, and being able to kind of get your point across is sort of lost in the detail, and everybody kind of glazes over, and you need to simplify it down. So quite often we see customers come in here and just screen clip and take these charts off of here to put into presentations to their management teams to help kind of secure that funding and to get the message across to them. At the same time, we can use this to define our actionable tasks for the technical teams. So we can click through all of these particular charts and graphs. So if I go through here into the improve score item, what that's going to do is pull up all the recommendations, all the changes that we can make that will have the most significant impact on the environment. So when you're looking for, where do I begin? How, when you've got quite a low score overall for your secure score and you want to make the biggest kind of impact as possible, quite often having the endpoint devices feeding into secure score through Defender endpoint and then using those improved score recommendations, you'll get a relatively short list of actionable items that you need to go through that will have quite a significant improvement on the score. Because, as I said before, generally endpoint devices, the users' things that they have in their hand, are often the most vulnerable part of the infrastructure. So if we have a quick look here at a couple of little examples, it's very similar to the way I showed you at the beginning there, what caused our score to drop. We're just looking again at what the recommendation is in order to be able to improve that particular score. So if we were to look at this as an example, disabling the local storage for password credentials on the device essentially means getting everything into a kind of federated model as far as possible, so that the least number of locally stored credentials, the least likelihood it is for somebody who compromises the device to obtain a credential that they can then use somewhere else maliciously. It's always a good idea to try and prevent that saving of credentials on the devices. It shows us through here kind of what impact it's going to have on our overall score. More importantly, typically how many devices are exposed to it. If it's a relatively high number, we can be fairly certain that there's no central control in place. We need to create one. And then the recommendation in here will often give us several ways that we can go about approaching that, so that we can either use a group policy, or if we don't have them on the domain and they're going out through an MDM, then there might be a registry entry that we can push through the MDM, or most MDM systems can push URIs to the device. So we can make that kind of central change through our own method. When it comes to devices, that's typically kind of how these pieces are put together. Using this information screen here as well, we also get to see very quickly where these threats have actually affected a device. So where we have a compromise ongoing in the environment, this is a Defender feature, but where Defender has reported observing a problem, and we've got it listed here as a remediation item that we want to fix. that will highlight here to say that there is an active incident, an active issue going on in the environment that this control could fix. The other quick indicator that we get, which is often a way you can use this information to steer your management teams in the direction of what's important now, what should we do first, is where we have actionable intelligence fed into this that says this has been seen in the wild. So often we'll get recommendations that are, you should do this because it's good security practice too, but we've not actually seen it, that compromise taking place out in the wild. That's excluding it's actually happening in your environment, but has been seen to happen out there, with other users and other customers of Microsoft's. That's what this indicates here, that an active threat has been seen, so the risk is higher. Basically, use that to guide your reporting to your management teams when you want to show which of these things is the more important to raise. So when we remediate these items, when we kind of address this actionable events that we've got here through the endpoint device, that then feeds immediately back up into our secure score. So it will take the actions that need to be addressed or things that need to be reviewed off the score here, improving your score, and you can then again use that in your feedback loop to your management teams to be able to show this investment, this is what we did, this is what we've achieved, this is how much closer we are to a more kind of rounded level of security for the organization. Okay, so I kind of want to just sort of summarize that, so hopefully I can kind of get the important kind of key points across, and then we'll kind of look and see some questions coming in, so we'll have a look at some of the questions that you guys have got. So secure score, its whole kind of purpose is to give you a summary or a summary set of information that you can leverage to demonstrate where your organization is on your overall security journey. Use it to justify the effort required to improve your security posture, and take that information and drive directly the actionable items that your team needs to do to actually correct the gaps that you've got in your security posture. So I think presenting the information in charts, especially for kind of management teams, is invaluable when you're trying to create a business case for budget. Always kind of remember that a sort of a mass of technical information around all the changes and things that need to take place, while a large list of things that needs to be done can kind of seem like you're getting the message across that this is gonna, all this work is then gonna help us get to a more secure posture. We often find when you're reporting to kind of senior management that you just need to demonstrate where the organization is on its journey, how that stacks up against, your kind of average customer that's similar, or average business that's similar to yours, and kind of how much you can kind of improve that by then doing your own kind of analysis work to pull out, right, all these actions, these are the recommendations, this is what I need to do to complete those actions. You can calculate from there how you're going to go about it, and what sort of work or effort level that's going to take. And you use those recommendation pages that we saw there to do that calculation, so you can give a more accurate justification or a more accurate budget, or kind of count on the amount of spend that you need for that service. And really kind of sort of important to all of that is, I said at the beginning, secure score is there for everybody. You can all see it in any Office 365 account, no matter how kind of small a license you've got. The more services that you've got connected to it, the more information you'll get around that. So the more valuable the secure score service becomes. If you haven't, right now, if you haven't explored the benefits of connecting your devices to Defender for Endpoint. And I know we did a tech talk some time back, maybe we'll do another one around kind of just how simple that is to connect devices to the Microsoft 365 Defender service, so you can see that vulnerability assessment across the devices. Windows has got it kind of built in, so it's just a case of configuring the service to connect back to Office 365. And all of you who've got a subscription, that includes either Defender for Endpoint or Defender for Business, so that would be the Business Premium product set, that includes it. It's got Defender for Business in Business Premium, or any of the E3, E5 or the A3, A5 equivalents for education. You've all got that capability built into the service, so you don't need to go out and invest anything extra. You just need to be configuring it. And if you just configure Windows to start with, then you'll get so much more information back into Secure Score that will then allow you to make that business case to the organization to say, look, we can handle these 10, 15 actionable items for this amount of time or this amount of cost, and that's going to significantly improve our score by in some cases 15-20% in one jump from one quite simple exercise. So I think the kind of takeaway messages from me before I go through kind of questions and answers for you is check out the Security Center, or it used to be called Security Center, the Defender, the 365 Defender portal. So security.microsoft.com. You'll find Secure Score in there, /Secure Score will take you straight to it. Where you can, if you've got those subscriptions, Business Premium or the Microsoft E3, E5 plans, connect your devices up, get that device analysis going, and then use the dashboards to simplify that message that you're trying to take to the business and take to the management team. Because so often, I can't stress this strongly enough, so often we see people trying to go into real detail about how all these actionable items are going to be completed, when at that kind of senior management level, we really just need to know where are we on our journey, and what sort of effort level is going to be required in order to be able to improve that, and how much of an improvement can we get from how much spend. All that information you need to be able to put that business case together is there behind those charts and graphs, and by reading those recommendations out of Security Center. We'll come back to the kind of questionnaire survey piece. There is a survey piece that we will cover, but what I'm going to do now is just go through our Q&A, because I can see a number of questions in there, and we often get some good ones to answer. So let's have a look and see what we've got here. So first up, what level of licensing do we need? We've covered that, I think, hopefully. It's anything that includes a Defender for Endpoint, so you can buy that as its own license. You can buy that as a license in its own right, so you don't need to license any other Microsoft Office 365 product to get it. It is part of the business Defender for Business service that is included in Business Premium licenses, and if you've got the Microsoft E3 or E5s, that's not the Office E3s and E5s, but the Microsoft E3s and E5s, it will be included as well. And actually, any of you who've got Windows Enterprise subscriptions, those will also include that particular capability. We've got a question here as well. Can Defender for Endpoint run alongside other antivirus products, e.g. Sophos? Yes, absolutely. Basic premise of that endpoint assessment piece is it will feed a stream of event information to the Defender Endpoint service. Whether or not the antivirus component is active is dependent on whether there is another one installed on the device. So the best way to think of it is, if you've already got an antivirus installed and you activate the Defender for Endpoint service, it is only an analysis, kind of logging, event monitoring tool until such time as you remove the other antivirus or disable it. If you disable it or remove it, Windows will do that thing where it identifies that antivirus is not present, and Defender will kick in and take over if you want to do it that way. Let's see, where would it show application-specific secure score, e.g. Teams? I can whiz back to that very quickly for you and show you. So in your recommended actions under secure score on here, these are grouped by the product that the change needs to come from. So if you want to see all the ones that are specific to Teams, you can filter and apply that, and it will show you all the controls or changes that you can put in place specific to Teams, if that's one area that you want to do. Again, you've got all the other components. So Defender for Office, if you've got that licensed, you'll see where you've not got things turned on. So you might have Save Attachments turned on, but if it's not blocking, as this one is here, then it gives you that recommendation. And for a lot of those online services pieces, Teams is the same as well. When you come into them and you look at the implementation piece, it will often take you straight to the docs.microsoft.com guide for how to do the implementation, or in a lot of these instances, if you hit the manage button and you've got the relevant permissions to get to that service, it will take you directly to the control that you need to implement. So you haven't even got to go and look for it. Okay, let's see. So how often are recommendations not relevant to your environment, e.g. lapse or password policies? Yes, that is true. There is always situations where you've handled these recommendations or these kind of checks in a slightly different way. Here's a good example actually on screen. So in this particular system, there's an external or kind of another URL link technology that's placed in front of Office 365 that's rewriting those links. So that would be the equivalent of what Safe Links is doing in Office 365. And to ensure that we don't do that twice, which would kind of slow down the process for the users, we know we've already put that in place. So what we've done on here is flagged that to be resolved via another product. So in this case, it's a Mimecast service. So where you've got those items that do show up, yes, you can address those. Lapse is an interesting one because I guess a good example of that environment, or where you've got an environment where lapse doesn't apply, is Azure AD. Lapse, for those of you, is a local admin password services. So it's a way to cycle the local admin password on the device. In those environments, you can actually still implement a flag on the PCs to show that you've got local password administration in place, because if you think about it, in Azure AD, you are disabling local passwords completely. So if you've got Azure AD joined devices where you're managing who are device admins through Azure AD or possibly through Endpoint Manager as well, you have in effect put a local admin password management system in place because you've just removed that whole scenario of local password admins. So there are ways you can flag those so that the system will show that local password admin is in place because it's done a check to show that local admins are disabled. So different ways to address different ones. How often do we get those? I guess in answer to your question, it's not huge. Typically, we will find those scenarios for our customers where there's another way to show the system dynamically that it's been addressed, so that you don't end up flagging lots and lots of them as accepted or handled by third party, because you kind of want to try and keep the system running its checks and monitors against that baseline as much as possible. Okay, I think that pretty much covers most of them. Yes, so for Graham, is there a webinar explaining or enabling devices in Secure Score and Microsoft 365 Defender? Yes, absolutely there is. And we've got softworks.com/TechTalks, that you can go to. All the previous Tech Talks that we've done, I don't think this is the first one I've done in at least 6 or 8 months, so they are going back a little way, but yeah, there's definitely Tech Talks out there that we've published around the Defender for Endpoint service, and the Microsoft 365 Defender integration piece was covered as part of that. Also, there's one for the Microsoft Defender for Office 365. So if you're interested in seeing those, please jump to that URL, have a look. They're all free to kind of watch and view as much as you want to. And if you want specific scenarios with us where you want to walk through your particular environment, then please do reach out and get in touch. We will quite happily book sessions to go through individual scenarios and walk you through kind of what's possible in the environment. Okay, I think we're a little bit ahead of time today, but we've covered all the answers there in the Q&A. Phoebe, is there anything else that you want to add? Okay. On that note then, thank you very much all for joining us today. And as I say, if you've got questions, you want to run any particular scenario directly with us, then please do feel free to reach out directly to info@softworks.com, and a member of our team will get in touch to arrange a session with you and go through anything you want to see in detail.